here we go. All righty. All right, well, welcome to Scrum Masters of the Universe. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, hopefully everybody can see my screen, just making sure if I can see some nods. Okay, cool. Just go over our mission like we always do. We believe there's great value in getting out of our silos and connecting with others who are passionate about growth as Agile practitioners. That's pretty much synonymous with everybody here, and our goal is to provide a place for Agile enthusiasts to learn, grow, flourish in applying Scrum and Agile in the world of work. There's some links there on how to connect with us. If you're here in this meeting, then you've already found our meetup page. So there's that. We're recording this, and Ben and Sheena have given us the go ahead to post that. So once it's done, probably it'll be sometime tomorrow, we'll post it to our YouTube channel. And we also have a Discord server. Just want to mention that if you're not familiar with Discord, just think of it like Slack, like Microsoft Teams. It's just a communication tool where there's channels and you can have discussions on things. So please check us out there. It's something that's relatively new, but had some really good discussions there. So check out our Discord server. And our leadership team, Jamie is our leader. You see myself there and Katrin Kemmeltz. Bless Katrin's sweetheart. She so wanted to be here, but she's from Germany. And she said, if it's okay with you, Mark, it'll be like midnight where I'm at. So if you need me, I'll be there. And I was like, Katrin, no, please do not come. That's much too late. But that's just, she has a servant's heart, which is key to being a Scrum Master. Some upcoming events. All right, making sure, do you see our meetup page now? All right, cool. So this is our current event here, but go out to our meetup page. You see the URL there. I'm going to share that pretty soon once I get through with these announcements. We've got some really good speakers coming up. Evelyn Ross, Jeff Gothelf, and Lucy O'Keefe are coming up in the next couple months. So be sure and go out there and register for these. Have some really good speakers coming up. All right, and our sponsors. So we originally had 3 sponsors: Agile Alliance, Agile AI, and Scrum.org. Been very great to us, but we have 2 relatively new sponsors to us: OptiLearn and Scrum Master. Please, please, please check them out. I'm going to post some links in there. Ryan Brooks is one of the heads of OptiLearn, and he offers, he's a professional Scrum trainer. He offers training, and Scrum Master is led by Daria Bajina. And if you're familiar with those 2, you know how wonderful they are. They are super awesome. I can't say enough good words. I've met with both of them. I've had training classes under Daria, and she's absolutely fabulous. So I'll share some links for you to go to, but super great. Thank you to our sponsors. They're super awesome. Okay, the reason you're here is to find out, how do we measure how well a team is doing for Scrum Masters and Agile coaches? So without further ado, since I'm the only one heading the boards here, I'm going to let Ben and Sheena give a self-introduction, if that's okay. I'm going to turn it over to them. So thanks a lot.
Great, thank you. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Sheena Gladden. I started off as a Scrum Master, moved into an Agile Coach, and currently pursuing my Certified Scrum Trainer certification. For me, being a Scrum Master and an Agile Coach means a lot. Team in general has been really the passion for me. So team health is really a great topic that I really enjoy and sharing with you. So would love to have this be an interactive session. So we'll be asking you questions throughout, and would love to get your thoughts and opinions.
And I am Ben Floyd. I'm based, I live just north of Salt Lake City, Utah. And like Sheena, I am on the path to becoming a CST. I actually go before the trainer approval committee on June 3rd. So not a lot of sleep right now, and studying for that big exam. I started off as a product owner, had an amazing Scrum Master, and I quickly learned from that mentor that I really cared more about people and the process. So I switched over and I was a Scrum Master for about 10 years and then an Agile Coach before, and on my journey to becoming hopefully a certified Scrum trainer in the next few weeks. And then I have an amazing mentor right now that continues to inspire me to reach higher and higher each time. So our topic today, like Sheena said, please, this is an interactive conversation. And it's a tool that we're going to give to you, that these are tools that we hope that you actually add to your tool belt, and you will have some actual files that you can use as well to use this. So without further ado, should we get started, Sheena?
Yep, sounds good.
All right. So team health. A lot of teams, Scrum Masters, coaches measure a team health. A lot of corporations will measure team health. A lot of organizations might call them maturity models. Spotify called them a squad health check. What are we trying to measure with team health? How are we doing that, and why are we doing that? Any thoughts along that?
Do you want some of the ones that we often hear?
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I think from my perspective, when I'm looking at team health, I'm looking at the entire part of the team. How are we collaborating? How are we maybe resolving conflict? Not just how are we doing on the software production end. What I'm often asked is, hey, how's our velocity doing? Right? So those are two very different things that we hear.
And I'm curious for the group that we have, if you could use your raise hand reaction in Zoom. How many of you are Scrum Masters or Agile Coaches? Just kind of want to get a feel for who's in attendance and your roles. Okay, seeing a good number there. Awesome. Thank you. So this is great. So as Scrum Masters, as coaches, how do you measure your team's health? And feel free to take yourself off mute and go ahead and share.
Donna, you mentioned one. Do you still measure velocity?
No, I do not. I am trying to, for various reasons, keep the teams that I'm working with from having to estimate at this point. We're working more on throughput and actually, trying to follow some of the principles. And that's partially knowing what we're anticipating down the road, velocity being used against them for. So I'm going back, and one of the teams I'm working with is running Kanban. So we're right now looking at, on a weekly basis, from a general perspective, how is that control chart trending? Are we lowering our average? They've just gotten started with that, so they're very new. So we're not measuring velocity.
How about other people? What do you do to look at team health? Jackie said, if the team works well together, any ideas identified to strengthen compared to where we want or need to be? Who else? Do you measure by the number of defects that are created, or production fixes, things along that line? Is there anyone who uses velocity?
We do use velocity, but I'm a bigger fan of people coming to stand-ups and having a chat, enjoying the conversations. That's, for me, is more of a better team health than looking at velocity.
Great, thank you for sharing. Sarah?
Yes, hi Sheena. Thank you for picking on me. A lot of times I like to factor in our retrospectives and really get a sense of how open and vocal the team is in regards to not just the last couple of weeks, but how things are going within the team. And over time with that social capital, things might start surfacing and teams might be able to address things a bit better and be able to actually say how they're feeling on that team. So I like to use that as well as a good indicator.
Okay. And let's see, Jackie said, we do measure velocity and predictability, but it's more of a tool. We've sometimes something on the lines of Spotify squad health check. For health, velocity on its own isn't useful, but volatility of velocity can be useful. How are they working with their partners? So does anyone have a way where you're measuring your team's health in a visual way?
I have a little bit in the past. I've done a couple of things with, either a word check-in that they put up on the board, when we were all together. I have done the happy, sad, the faces. And I've also had them do, this was with a different team when they were running sprints, had them do a team journey line and draw their team journey. And then we went back and looked at what happened to make it, go up or go low. And so they were able to generate some conversation with that.
Oh, that's awesome. And for those of you that do measure health, how often do you do it? So Jackie says during our retro, the one word describes their feelings about the sprint. Okay, or the PI. Anyone else? A 6-question survey every sprint.
See, Cross, I have a question on that 6-question survey. Is that shared with the team or is that shared with management? Is that just a team? And then how do you follow up with that?
This might be easier if I take my mic off or turn my mic on. So the questions we ask the team are the same questions generally, and they have input on what those questions are. And then we are able to see over time if there's dips, right? We can usually explain why the questions, the responses are low. For example, if a team has too much work going on at once, and that's one of the questions, how do you feel about it? Well, we know there's too much work, and we recognize that the values for that question are probably going to be low, but we would expect to see something, the values be high if the question is, I feel valued, I feel heard, and I understand what's happening with the team, or what the expectation of the team is. So if we start to see something like that from the individual responses, then we can look and see what are we going to do about it. Now, if we only pretty much share the aggregate results with leadership, just because they're curious how the teams are going, they don't look at the individual responses. Those are anonymized anyways, but we find that it's valuable for leadership to have that high level trending view only. So you can see if I recently had a team where they had a significant turnover, and you could see sprint over sprint what was, things were starting to decline because people were leaving, and then as the team was rebuilt, you could see those values come back up, and there was a story behind it, and we always give context when sharing that story.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
And then another response was some teams use Office Vibe. It's like a daily mood check. How do I feel today? Now, curious for that in the sprint, like suppose in the daily mood, something happened to the person earlier that day, they started off the day bad, and now we're doing this check. How does that not affect them? And maybe they were down already and they're responding in a negative way.
And then how do you act on it as a Scrum Master or a coach?
So we have some techniques for you that we'd like to share and go into a little bit more of different ways that we can look at the team.
So we're looking at visualization, and how do we actually look at things that, what could we measure, and then what can we act upon as Scrum Masters and coaches? give you a little couple things in background where others have done this in the past. What you're seeing right here, this is a capability maturity model that was developed by the US Department of Defense back in the early 90s, in the late 80s into the early 90s. Believe it or not, this was designed by the Department of Defense to measure contracting software development teams to give them an assurance of how likely the team was to deliver the software on time and on budget. So they used to grade a contractor using this model. How mature were they as a development team? Somebody mentioned the Spotify model, and we've got something that's a derivative of the Spotify squad model, and it can be used at the team level, but it allows you to act upon it and to customize it, and is what we're going to show you something here today. And one more for you is, here's a team maturity model. This is sort of based off of the Tuckman model, and how a team comes together, and you put the people in one end of the cone, and they go through these different phases. And at the other end of the cone, you hope that they have this enhanced culture and maturity. What we're looking at today, what Sheena and I are just showing you today for your toolbox, is we're looking at a way to bridge the gap between these models. We're looking at, how do you measure where your team is in May of 2022, and then take a snapshot of that, and then measure them again, let's say in October or November this year. And how do we know how do we know as a Scrum Master or a coach that we've made a difference? How do we know which areas that we should be focusing on during the next quarter or the next 6 months that we should be acting upon these areas? So it also adds a level of transparency and allows us to have a conversation as soon as we use this. We get a snapshot, we understand what the team is feeling, and then we get to have a conversation with them. And we'll show you these as we start to go through these right now. So it's based on the basic premise of a red, yellow, green. This is good, green is great. Yellow, we should be taking caution with. Red, we're not doing so great. The great thing that we're going to give you today is you get to customize this. So what works for Donna's team, Donna, go for it, customize it, whatever you guys want to do. What works for Vicky and what Vicky wants to measure, if she wants to measure 5 things, great, go for it. And then Mark's team, if Mark wants to measure 10 things every 6 months, you not only get to customize what red means to your team, but you can customize the category as well. So I'll show you a couple of these as examples coming up here. So some of the things what are some categories? Let me toss it back to the group here. What are some categories that you could see wanting to measure if you're a Scrum Master or an Agile coach? What would be some categories you could think of? Psychological safety. I like that, Daniel. Great. Collaboration. Are we collaborating as a team? I like that a lot. Are we collaborating with another team? Are we collaboration's an excellent one. Sue, could you tell us more about this one for trust? How would you measure, what would you be asking the team? Is it internal trust? Is it?
Sorry, I couldn't get myself off mute. Yeah, I'm thinking about internal trust, and I would be looking to see how they're communicating with one another in an open way, looking for more and different voices, that kind of thing.
Excellent. So I'm just putting these up here. You've added some here in the channel. I'm just putting some things up here that we've seen in the past. Are we delivering value? Jackie just put, are we supporting our team members? That's what just as that bullet comes up, is the team member receiving support from you, the Scrum Master, or the Agile Coach? You could put another one up there. You'll see this one combined for us. Are they receiving the proper support from the product owner? How does the team actually feel about this? What is our process? Is the team actually having fun? Do they like working on this team? Or do they just feel like, I know of a team that was working on maintaining a legacy software that had been around for 23 plus years, and they were just trying to keep the thing alive while they developed a new software, and they weren't having a lot of fun. and it was not fun coming to work. What was the quality? What's the speed like on this team? Are we pretty good at getting things out the door, or are we just kind of mired in bureaucracy of what we're doing here? And then this one, you'll see this one, learning. Do the developers feel like they're learning new skills? Are they on the cutting edge, or are they still, programming in COBOL or Pascal? And I'm dating myself now, so I'll move on from that one right now. And you can measure other things that would be relevant to your product owner. Does the team have a good idea of what our roadmap is? Do they even have an idea what our product goal or vision is for this team? So it's completely customizable, this tool. We've got this one. Are we a pawn or a player here? Do we have a voice on what we're going to develop, or do we not have a voice in it? Mark puts in here, always interesting to know how the team should be measured versus what as Scrum Masters feel should be measured. Mark, would you elaborate a little more on that?
Yeah, I had to look for the mute button here. Yeah, so sometimes I get very overzealous. That's one of either my charms or character flaw, one of the two, but sometimes I get very excited, and with something like this, I'd immediately come with, here are 12 values we're going to use to monitor our team health, and present those to the team. And they're kind of like, probably half of those I don't agree with. And just seeing, what does the team think about measuring health? What's important to the team to measure? It's a hole that I continue to step in. I always have to remind myself of.
And that's the great thing about this tool we're going to give you today, is you could have that conversation and dial it back to 6 things. The key that we hope you take away with this is you can customize it to whatever your situation is. But the aspect that we're looking for as Scrum Masters and coaches is, what are the areas that your team's doing well that you can reinforce? And what are the areas that the team has identified are gaps? Where are we falling short? And then what can we do to support that? What can we do to change things as Scrum Masters and Agile coaches? So with that, let me show you a couple of examples of this. So this is one that shows a red, yellow, green light. What does a red mean? What does a yellow mean? What does a green mean? That's completely customizable. So what green means to Mark and Mark's team is a conversation that they have. What it means to Donna's team, what's a red or a yellow, completely customizable. You'll have a PowerPoint file that you can use in Office or Google Docs or whatever. So you can customize these. And what we would do is we would go in and work with a team, and we would print these out. I had these actually laminated as a coach, and I would put these all up around the room. If I had 10 of these, I would put them all up around the conference room. And then I would put the same color or maybe 2 colors of dry erase markers. And I would let the team, everyone except the Scrum Master, go ahead and vote. And they just pick up a dry erase marker and they go around and they get to read. This one, for example, says, I'm receiving support from the product owner and the Scrum Master. And they fill in a red bubble if they feel like they're not getting great support. If the support is all right, they would fill in the yellow bubble. And if they feel they're getting great support, they would fill in a green bubble. And the idea by giving them the same color dry erase marker is they're not saying, well, Sheena's watching and she knows that Ben picked up the green one, so I'm watching everywhere the green one. And believe it or not, people wonder about that. So you have to make it that safe environment that they can vote and just say how they feel. You can do this online with tools like Mural or Miro as well, and just put them into a team room and have the categories, and they can all go in and put check marks next to the ones that they feel. So it can be adapted for in-person or online. So let's take a look at a few more here. This one would be a team roadmap. And I had one team that I went in to coach, and the team felt that, listen, we're just here to show up and put things through. We have no idea what we're headed towards. We have no idea if it actually has value or not and where we're headed. And the product owner, I knew, went to great lengths to update the roadmap every quarter. But somehow there was a gap between the developers and the product owner as to how that was being displayed. Yes, mural and Miro. Yes, it's a tongue. You know what, Sheena, we should update this and put both of them on there.
That's true.
So here's the results. So we'll give you this Excel spreadsheet as well. This is the team that was measured. We blocked out their name to save their identity. Just go ahead and take a look at it for a second. And what jumps out to you in a positive way if you're a Scrum Master or a coach, and what jumps out to you at things that you should be concerned about when you see this?
Well, it looks like they're getting great support and they're happy with the support from the PO and the Scrum Master.
How do you know that?
It looks to be all green.
Okay. What else would be a positive for this team?
They're having fun.
They're having fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
They like coming to work on this team, don't they? But there's a critical one here that I think is really positive, that I would be doing backflips if I was the Scrum Master.
Delivering value.
Yeah.
They're delivering value. For me, their teamwork. They all think they're working together as a team very well, and they're delivering value. They go hand in hand, don't they? I'd be like, yes, what you're doing, keep doing. And that's what I told them. I said, what you're doing, keep doing that. You're supporting them. They feel like they're delivering value. Keep it up. What are some things that would catch your attention as a Scrum Master or a coach that you would want to start to pay attention to?
That pawn or player thing looks a little disheartening.
So why do you say, Vicky, pawn or player?
Yeah, it's I'd be curious to get more clarification about how they feel. It sounds almost like they think they're a feature factory.
Right. And you can tell that because there's a lot of yellow. So this could go either way, can't it? It could shift over towards the green area, or it could definitely shift to the red area, but it's definitely a cautionary tale, isn't it?
Yep.
What else sticks out to you in this picture?
I'd be concerned that people feel that they aren't learning, or at least that's how I'm reading that, the red with learning.
Mhm.
Because I think in a lot of cases, people are more motivated if they're learning and growing. And I'd be worried that people would be looking for other opportunities or ways to move on if they feel they're not growing with this team.
Exactly. Sounds good. So in this type of health check, it's not something that you would do every sprint. And even once a month is probably a little too much. So in here, we have a team, they baselined in March, and then they revisited the same categories again in July. So again, if you were a Scrum Master or a coach, how would you look at this, and what does this say to you? What's happened with the team over time?
Consistently delivering value.
But they're not having as much fun anymore.
Something has changed, right?
Yeah, they feel like they're getting a little bit better on teamwork, but that pawn or player, that one turning red is a little bit concerning, and it looks like they feel like the support from the PO and the Scrum Master has really gone down.
Right. Now, this tool, you can change the categories. It doesn't have to be these, so you want to customize it to yourself. So for me, I personally would change the pawn and player, because I've had team members or teams where maybe we're just working in silos, right? Each person's picking up their own task, but are they really working together to get the product backlog items done? Are they, swarming together when someone's stuck, things along that line? So maybe rephrasing that category might work for you. Again, each of these are to what you see fit. And I think it was Mark who said it, maybe come up with it together as a team. What are these things that we want to measure outside of the sprint that is really important to us as a team? And again, it doesn't have to be this many, it could be like just a handful, but it might be a team effort to kind of figure that out and then measure that along the line. All right. So this gives you a visual of that very quickly. You would take the check marks from that PowerPoint that you saw with the arrows and such, you would count them up as a Scrum Master or a coach, whoever's doing this piece, and then you would just plug this into the Excel just to show the visual. And you want to track this again, 6 months, maybe a year, depends on your team and how often the team feels that they really need to visit this. But it's not something you would do in the sprint. It's something that you would do over the course of time.
So here's another check-in with them later on that year. So this would be their third check-in. What would you take away as a coach or a Scrum Master at this point?
This is a very interesting one because the support from PO and SM has really helped them, but the mission seems to be going a bit downhill.
What about the learning category? How many of you would say you would keep that on here and keep checking in with them, or would you take it off if you were the Scrum Master or the coach?
I would keep checking in.
Yeah, learning is critical. And by the way, I really like the way you're showing the deltas on the right now. That helps immediately identify some areas.
So a couple things on this one. I would, my 2 cents, my coaching, this is just a tool for you to use. Best practices that I've seen with using this over the years is as soon as you use this tool, take a snapshot of this, and this is simply an Excel sheet, and you can just do a screen capture and then publish it into your team channel, publish it into your Confluence page, publish it into your whether it's your Microsoft team or your Slack channel, but show them the results. This is not a secret. This is for the team. And like Vicky said, show them where things have improved and show them the numbers, show them the data where things are changing. Now, as far as the learning one on this one, I actually told the Scrum Master in this one, I would, because this was actually measured with 3 different teams, I'd take learning off of this one. And the reason being, it was a company organizational issue and it was irritating all the teams. This was consistently an organizational impediment that most developers were feeling across the teams. And every time they saw this every 5 to 6 months, it just reminded them of, okay, they're still not letting us learn new skills. They're still not embracing us going for a 5-day training class. And they were getting mad about it. And as you can see, the needle did not change from July to December. And at that point, my advice was, as Scrum Masters, you need to go in and take this up level to another level. This is not going to be solved at the team level. You need to take this and address this with the powers to be. Because when you keep checking in with them on this, until you just say, does that still hurt? Oh, it does? Okay, good. Just checking in. Does it still hurt? Okay, I can't do anything about it. And it was really upsetting the teams. And so there wasn't any until they came back and said, okay, starting in 2019, management is going to allow you, just like the Google way, 25% of your time to work on new skills. Until they came back with something from higher ups, they were just sort of poking at them every time they measured this. So it's that balance you have to find. Vicky?
Yeah, I actually have a question about that. So I have a bit of concern that it could be interpreted if you're not addressing it. That's like, okay, they didn't like what we were saying about how we're not, learning the way, it's important to us. So they don't even ask about it anymore. It seems like there might be opportunity to, as you are visiting these topics, to point out that we know that learning has been an issue and we are addressing that with leadership, and we expect to come back to you with a decision.
And that was the primary data that we gathered. What you just saw here was 1 year's worth of data, and you saw one team, but this happened across 3 teams that we measured. And it was consistently in this red and yellow negative category all year for all 3 teams. The Scrum Masters for all 3 teams went back to their teams and said, we're taking this up the ladder. It's going to be addressed. We don't have a solution yet, but we are actively working on it. And it was not.
That.
Say that?
Yeah, I misunderstood. So glad to hear that they took that approach. As
so,
opposed to like just seeming like we're sticking our head in the sand and not addressing it.
Correct. That would not be the appropriate thing. And we just took it off because we don't want to deal with it anymore. They took it head on and said, okay, we know this is a systematic culture organization problem that we have here. We're going to deal with it. And that's what they did.
Thanks for that clarification.
You bet. What are some other things that you notice about this team now?
Looks like they may have had some conflict on the team because the teamwork score has definitely increased in the yellow section.
Look what happened on their mission statement, how they all feel about their mission over the course of the year. Remember how earlier I said you can watch it and it went from one green and a whole bunch of yellow. Now we've got more red and yellows. They're not headed in the right direction as far as knowing what they're supposed to be doing and where they're headed as a team here. They're going into really dangerous waters.
So that's kind of surprising though, because when you look at the pawn or player, it looks like we have more positive numbers there. So it looks like they're less feeling that they're being manipulated, and yet they're still not headed toward their vision.
So if you look at that, Vicky, you still have the exact same number that are in yellow on this team. There's one more that, and so they still don't have a voice in feeling like they have an outcome, saying the outcome.
I'll give you an example of that. When I joined an organization, I was a consultant and I joined and I was talking to one of the developers and they were saying, we're just doing like story by story. So they were delivering, right? And they had speed and such, but he's like, I feel like I'm just building widgets. I don't really know what the bigger picture is. And I had just joined, so I was kind of asking a lot of questions and I said, okay, we have this November deadline. So it was for a bank and it was prepaid cards, debit cards, and credit cards. I said, so what are we delivering for November? And like, no one could answer that. There wasn't clarity on what are we marching towards? Are we picking a particular kind of card and then working towards that? So that's when I really had to pull the Scrum Master, the product owner over and say, hey, let's revisit. And you might have done it once before, right? But maybe revisit with the team of like, hey, what are we trying to work towards? And what's the focus here? And so therefore, they could be delivering, but they really don't understand the larger picture, or they might just need reinforcement throughout every so often, right? Are we still marching towards that? Did we pivot in some way? Was there something, a larger priority? So it helped bring that conversation together with the product owner and the team of that vision or mission in that situation. So you could be delivering, but it doesn't mean that they all feel like they understand what they're marching towards.
One last thing to cover here is take a look at in December, their support from their product owner and Scrum Master. Compare that to earlier in the year. And also take a look at their ease of releasing their products and how that's changed. And so when I was coaching this team, I needed you both to keep doing what you're doing. And what they had done was the product owner was situated with the team on this particular team. They had moved in with the team. They were more accessible to the team. They were getting quicker decisions from the product owner. The product owner, they felt, was a part of the team instead of someone that just was coming in for the swoop and poop. And so they felt that they were a team. And so that moved into the right direction. This team also incorporated DevOps into their team. And so they got away from a release train and incorporated DevOps onto their team. And so that brought them a great sense of satisfaction in moving that way.
Yeah, Jackie guessed that, right? She said, guessing there was some release automation there.
Correct. So with that, I'm going to start uploading the files here, but what questions do you have to throw at Sheena? Please throw it, the hardest ones you can.
So keep in mind that in your sprint retros, right, you really want to focus on the sprint. But this is a measurement that you want to just think about the team at certain increments and such versus after specific to a sprint.
So would you suggest a separate session where you sit down with the team and talk with these outside of the?
Yeah, and depending on your team, you may want to develop it together, figure out your categories. Again, keep it simple, start with just maybe a handful, try that out for a while and see if that works. Otherwise, you could introduce this and then see what their thoughts are.
I'm just thinking about how I might go about choosing the right questions based on things that I'm observing in the team and not wanting that they are not realizing that I need to help them realize, right? I don't really have a specific question, but if you have, any guidelines there that you could offer, that'd be great.
For me, a lot of times the key is that whole picking up and working in kind of silos versus like really working together as a team. I found as a Scrum Master, like I was the only one really looking at the stories and are we stuck, are we moving and things along that line versus them really looking at it. Everyone was just, at that time we were doing the 3 questions, right? And so they were just kind of going through the movement. For me, I changed it up a little bit where we went by story and then they started seeing it in a different light versus from just their pieces. So that helped a little bit. But that was very key for me, that are we really working together or are we just doing our individual pieces and saying we're a team?
And to add on to what Sheena's saying, I would also take your intuition, you know your team best, and start with 8 of these. Start with maybe 8 or 10 and take your first pass at these before you present them to the team, and then have a conversation before you ever think of measuring the team and saying, here's what I'm thinking of doing. And here's the 8 different categories, or here's the 10 different categories. What are your thoughts? Have your input. And here's what my first pass at a red, yellow, green on support from a Scrum Master means. Here's what the red, yellow, green support from the product owner. Here's what our ease of release means, and get their input and see if you can come to a consensus. If you can get 8 out of the 10 to say that's a thumbs up, go with it.
Is it Shezboa? I think you raised your hand, had a question maybe, or a comment?
Yeah, I do have a question on retrospective, and I also have another question. So for a team that's in the forming stage, how would you and you have to create your working agreements, how would the first retrospective be, where you have to talk about the working agreements and basically on the working agreements on how we get to work and and maybe that this sprint also this team also has begun, that is, they had a sprint that led to that retrospective. How would you manage the discussion between the working agreement and also discussion about the sprint for during that retrospective? And my second question is, I don't know if you have either a checklist that could help guide managing a team that is in the forming stage, a checklist that could help guide a Scrum Master when it comes to bridging the gap that comes to the forming stage. Because, you know, with the forming stage, you're having issues with roles and responsibility, you're having issues with the goals of the team, that's clarity on the goals of the team and the rest. So how do you, I don't know if you have a checklist for that could help a Scrum Master. These are my two questions.
Yeah, so there is a checklist. It's not necessarily from a forming stage, but there is a Scrum Master checklist. We'll find the link for you. That is a lot of times it's helpful for the Scrum Master to review and see, are we doing this? You know, and some of it is working with the product owner. Does the team understand the product goal? Things along that line. So we could put that link in the chat for you of that Scrum Master checklist.
Thank you so much.
The other part about the retrospectives and the working agreements, I'm a big believer for working agreements. My personal opinion is that the retrospective should focus just on the sprint that you just had, and that what we've just showed you today, this should be a separate quick meeting for the team to go in and do this. This is less than a 20-minute exercise, half an hour exercise, maybe the first time. But this should be separate from the retrospective, because this is not focusing on what the team just accomplished, things that are going well, things that are not going well for the team. This would be separate from that. So I would not make this a part of the retrospective. I would make this a standalone meeting to do the team health check throughout the year.
Thank you very much for your both answers.
And this is probably something you want to wait. The team's formed, let them go a couple of sprints before maybe you would do this health check. Maybe go a couple of, maybe 6 sprints or 6 months or so, something along that line, so that they get a chance to form and storm and such, right? Before you're really doing a baseline, just let them have a chance to work together first.
Okay.
Nawaz had a question in here about the discussion with the leadership team and how leadership interpreted this information. So first of all, this was done at the team level, and this stayed at the team level. The only thing that surfaced up to leadership was the learning aspect, and then also the that one team, it was separate. It wasn't from this, where they took on the DevOps, and they justified the need of having the DevOps onto their team. But the leadership wasn't even aware that the teams were measuring this for the better part of a year and a half. And it's sort of like Donna was saying in the beginning here, she's getting away from velocity and how they're doing their estimations. And great. And the thing that I would look at too, what we did with this was information for the Scrum Master and for the Agile Coach on what they can do at a team level. This was not to check in and let the VP know, well, this team's not having any fun, and this team is having a blast. They're having a great time, but they're not releasing anything. So you're either paying them too much, or they're just sitting back, or, it's time to get the stick out. And so this was not ever intended just to be a reporting tool or a mechanism for them. It was meant to, like many of you said early on in this discussion, to have that psychological safety. And the team said, I can express how I feel on this, and it's going to be counted, and then my Scrum Master is going to act on it.
But then you also mentioned that you aggregated it. And so I'm curious about that, because we are being asked some things that we're, as coaches, we're slightly uncomfortable with. So I'm curious about the aggregation and how you shared that with leadership.
So that's how they first found out that we'd been doing this for a better part of a year and a half was, by the way, here's how these 3 separate teams feel, and here's how it's progressively getting worse. And they were like, they couldn't argue with this is how close to 30 people were feeling, and this is how it was measured over the course of a year. And then they had to have the conversation. And it wasn't even until after we had the conversation about the learning and what we could do about in the upcoming year, what were the things that were going to fiscally did we need, and what were the things that we could do without a fiscal obligation. And it didn't come up till like a month later before they said, by the way, how did you get all that? And so we started the conversation off with, let's have the conversation, and here's why, here's what the teams are showing us. And they're like just stunned. And we had the conversation, and it didn't dawn on them until about a month later until they said, how did you come about that information? And so the leadership there was like, glad you're measuring that for your teams. And they didn't come back and say, show us more. What else are they showing us? And I would have resisted as their coach. I would have resisted and said, you know what Donna's team's doing? She needs that capability to work as a Scrum Master and that latitude. I would resist making this a report that you roll up.
Yeah, thanks for that.
What other questions do you have?
About 5 minutes, so get your questions now.
So the PowerPoint and the Excel is in the chat. You can download those. You can use it in, it doesn't have to be Microsoft product, so you could use it in Google Sheets, anything along that line, but it's something for you to use as an example. You could always import it into the virtual whiteboards and things along that line as well. So don't feel that you have to use it in this format, whatever works for you and your organization.
Is there a place that we'll be able to download those that is outside of the chat after the meeting?
That's a Mark question.
And how do we access it?
Yeah,
I'll make those available, Donna.
great. Thank you.
Not to worry. Yep.
I'm headed straight into another meeting.
Oh, no.
Are we going to get it as a mail?
Yeah, so you'll get it through Meetup. So I'll send a message through Meetup, and it'll probably be sometime tomorrow. Once the recording finishes processing, I'll send the recording, the slides, and these two attachments for you. Yep.
We want to thank you so much for your time and your participation, all your examples as well. Really enjoyed the chance to have the conversation with you.
Thank you. This has been really informative.
You're welcome.
And
Thank you for
Sheena,
having
this
us.
is an incredibly practical session. Yeah, so something we can all put to use very quickly. So thank you very much for being our guests.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Great. All right, everybody. Great to
Have a
see
good
you,
day.
Ben and Sheena. I don't know if you have a couple minutes to stick around, if anybody has any questions. Yeah, we'll leave it open for just a little bit if you want to talk about anything else. Bye, Vicky. This was great, y'all.
Okay, I have a bit of questions. Permit me to still ask more questions, please. Okay, so it's more like also I'm also asking questions relating to the PI planning too. If there are templates for it. I understand that there's a guide, a safe guide on that, and then that's okay. But then I just needed a guide on that. And basically, my second question is on the backlog refinement. So I was having a discussion with the PO, and for him, he sees that he's okay with the backlog refinement being once a sprint. And going with what I've observed, the anti-patterns that I'm observing, it's very clear that, which has also affected the delivery. I had to go ahead to say, we should have, this shows that the team is not yet matured. So we should have our backlog refinement once every month, once every week. I don't know if you have any videos or any materials that could just support that, because I like to share videos with him so that I could have a second meeting to make him see reasons on why this is it's very pertinent.
So you're looking to increase the refinement session? Is that what you were saying? And then you want to
Yes.
share that with the product owner?
Yes, because the feedbacks that we get is glaring, that we have a lot of bugs. We have a lot of bugs popping up, and feedback also from the teams that I've had also is they have less clarity on this on the acceptance criteria. So for a team that has that is not too clear, that means it shows that there's a gap when it comes to the explanation on what's expected to be delivered. And right now, as a result of that, we're having a lot of delays. There's a lot of gaps on what they're working on. So I feel, or what I've known over time, is that we should have refinements more than just once. We should have refinements once a week, so that we could be able to, when we identify this, maybe impediments or strong blockers, at this point in time, there could be a bit of feedback, and it could also reflect on the product backlog for prioritization and also for refinement.
So if you don't mind me stepping in here, I know we're after time. So Ben and Sheena, maybe that's something that I'm not sure if y'all would want to engage outside of this on, if there's some additional time that you have, but I definitely want to be respectful of your time here this
Actually, I was
evening.
thinking it might be a good future topic for us to cover in a session,
Ooh.
refinement and retros, maybe even.
Okay.
That's nice.
You could probably deep dive into a little bit more of those.
Cool. All right, well, we'll have to bring you back then.
I don't know when you'll be having that session, but I really like to be in that session.
Yeah, keep an eye on Meetup. And we try to publish our sessions, several months in advance, maybe not that far, but some of them are several months in advance. But yeah, keep an eye on that. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and kind of shut things down. I should have stopped the recording here.